All right, let's go right into it. Thank you for having me tonight, and I'm very proud to talk to my fellow international house students and alumni. So, before we start, please make sure that you have everything that you need, which is one skillet, salt and pepper, a good knife, a fork or one of those things, or spatula, and a spoon, and a plate so that you can eat everything afterwards. Okay. The breast of duck you should have gotten from an international house, and they were really nice to organize this and to sponsor it. A little bit of truffle butter and some very concentrated broth called duck demi-glace. And there is also a little bit of veal bone in there. All it is in here, it's red wine, lots of vegetables, and it's cooked down and reduced and reduced and reduced with lots of duck bones and one veal bone of the collagen until it actually becomes very concentrated, very flavorful, and this at room temperature is going to become liquid, but it was very jelly-like. Okay, so you please, as we mentioned before, feel free, seriously feel free to ask any questions, and first just say in the chat that you want to ask a question. That way, Sieja can call you on it, so that only one person talk at a time. But I would love to have the interaction, and so don't hesitate to ask questions. All right, let's go right into it. You have a knife and you have a duck breast. This is the duck breast from the foie gras duck, moulard duck. So it's pretty big. It's 14-15 ounce. It's dark red, not like those Long Island ducks that are pretty pale in color and much younger. So this will need to be cooking in a certain way because it has more properties of a steak, really of red meat, than of poultry. And you see it just with the color. First, check here that little nerve end is out. Not much, just this little vein that comes out with the fat, like that. Okay? It was at the end right there. So take that out, and then turn it around to the skin side. What we're going to do here, it's a very simple recipe, but it involves getting the skin very nice and crisp. In order to get the skin nice and crisp, you want to get the fat out so that all you have is that thin layer of the skin that is so good. If you don't like that, you can always take it out before you serve, but never take it out before you cook, because you need this to cook properly the meat. The meat itself is extremely lean, so you do need that cover to protect it. So what we're going to do to try to render as much of that gold liquid as possible, which is duck fat, which by the way we're going to use to cook. I don't know what kind of vegetables you got. I bought myself some our 1 pound organic mix, cultivated mushroom. We're going to cook it in that duck fat, the duck fat from that breast. Okay, so take the breast on an angle, start scoring the skin in small lines as close to each other as possible, and do not cut the flesh. Just stay on the skin like this. Can you see what I'm doing? So once you're done with one side, you see what happens there? Then we simply go on the other side, just to score, just scoring the skin. So it's not mandatory to do that, but the smaller the squares, the more you're going to render the fat. You see how that does. And so the more fat you're going to get, which is what you want to cook other things with it. In Gascony, we cook everything in the fat. We even have desserts in the fat. You don't have to wait for the pan to get hot, and you want your pan to stay low. Simply because you don't want to burn that fat. All you want is that fat to render very slowly, okay? While you do that, then you take the salt and pepper, and you put the salt, from high up, so it's very uniform on the breast. Be generous. You can hold it, you can take it. The higher you go, the more uniform the salt is going to come down on your meat. And a little bit of fresh cracked pepper. And we will do the same thing after we turn the meat around. We do salt and pepper on the other side. Everybody's with me so far? I see people working hard in their kitchen. That's nice. Okay. Then I don't know if you have mushrooms or if you have other kind of vegetables. Any vegetables go. I love mushrooms. I just love mushrooms, so that's what I'm gonna have tonight. They are very clean to begin with, so all I'm doing is making sure that I take out the roots. Otherwise, they are pretty much ready to go. And those are cultivated. In the cultivated department, I will have organic mushrooms always, and if possible, maitake, hand of the wood. It's to me the most perfumey cultivated mushroom around. But if you have the luxury to be able to have wild mushroom, it's always better because it's always even more aromatic. All right. And here it's just a mix of conchimidis, POP, the same family of mushrooms.
So Ariane, we have a question.
Yes.
Tom wants to know which side up when you put it in the skillet.
Right now we are rendering the fat that we scored. Okay, so the fat is underneath, and the heat is very, very low, very low. Even though it's very low, and we started with a dry pan, you see the fat is starting to render. That's what you want to do. On that side, on the skin side, you want to go very low. It's going to be 10, 12 minutes like this. As the fat render, we're going to use it for the mushrooms, but you don't want it to burn. And duck fat will burn at very high temperature, like olive oil, but still, once it burns, it's not good to use. It's not good for the health, and it's not good tasting anyway.
Someone else wants to know how high should the heat level be?
The lowest possible. Very low. You want to go as low as you can go, because again, you want to slowly render the fat. Slowly render the fat.
And what kind of pan are you using? Carbon steel, non-stick, and can you use a cast iron?
Right now, just because it was here, I have this non-stick, but I promise you, you don't need a non-stick. Any skillet will do. Anything solid and good quality, cast iron is fine, non-stick is fine, stainless steel is fine. Don't worry about it, really, because the fat we're going to put in there and the little scraps that are going to stay there are going to contribute to the sauce. So I want my mushrooms to be cooking in the same time. That's why I'm cutting those in half, more or less. Okay. So I am good with my mushrooms. And I'm starting to have the fat that I'm going to need for the mushrooms. And by the way, this is hand of the wood, this one right there. Here I'm throwing it out because it's a weekend and it's a shame, but we have chickens here. So usually I keep everything, every scrap for the chicken. Okay, so by now you should have something that resembles this. You see the fat? And yet just barely starting to color. Okay? You don't want to color too fast. Really, you want it to go slow. Slow, nice and slow. It's going to be the other way around on the other side, but for now, nice and slow. As you have extra fat, just take it out of the pan. In that case, I'm just going to put it directly in the other pan so that I can start on the mushrooms. And if you don't have the patience, you can start also with a little bit of oil, but that fat will be better. And since we're going to finish it with truffle butter, I'm going to take a little bit of that truffle butter and putting it in there for the mushrooms or the vegetables. What you're going to use as a accompaniment.
How thin should the mushrooms be cut?
Excuse me?
How thin should the mushrooms be cut?
It depends. What's important is that they are cut uniformly, so they're going to cook in the same time, and they're going to finish. They're going to be ready in the same time. So if you're impatient and you want to eat in, at 7:30, as we said we were going to eat, then it has to be pretty small. This is what I did, you know.
Perfect.
All right, now we're starting to talk. You see the color of the breast starting to be nicely colored. This is the color that you want. You see that the fat seriously rendered. And we're going to do another 2 minutes in there, and then we'll see. Meanwhile, here, so a little bit of that duck fat and a little bit of that truffle butter. The truffle butter will impart some truffle aroma to the whole mushroom mix. If you have vegetables or potatoes, do exactly the same thing with potatoes because it's great. I promise you it's great. It will have that move of the... I converted vegetarians with potatoes cooked in duck fat. I promise you. Okay.
We have a few folks that just joined us and are asking if it's possible, can you give them a quick recap?
I didn't get that. Sorry.
We have a couple of folks that just joined us and are asking if it's possible for you to give them a quick recap on what we have done so far.
If it's possible to do what?
Give them a quick recap, just kind of basically go over what we've done. Yes.
Okay, so for the latecomers, take the duck breast, score the skin in little squares like this. Take your pan, dry, no fat, no nothing, put it at very low, put it skin side down, and wait for 10 minutes like that. Okay, we're at that point. Meanwhile, we cut our vegetables, in my case, mushroom. All the fat that was in there, we threw in here to cook the vegetables, and I added a little bit of truffle butter in there. That's where we are. Now, I'm going to put my mushrooms in the pan.
Did you add the truffle butter into the pan with the duck fat?
Yes, for the mushroom, yes, a little bit, not much. I just took a little spoon of it, not much. So here we have the mushrooms at a medium, salt and pepper. And again, you can do the same thing with potatoes if you want to do it with potatoes. Little bit of salt. So here we are good. All right. And now you're going to switch your temperature to really high. And then once it's really high on the breast, you're going to flip the breast. So now that's where we are. That's where we are. Okay? And we want a very high temperature because now we want to sear. We want to sear the flesh side. The flesh side has to sear to keep all the flavor inside. Very important.
So we have a couple questions about potatoes. Someone roasted their potatoes in the oven and is wondering if they should put them in the duck fat on the stove as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's as easy to do it in the pan, the potatoes, but if you did put them in the oven, then put salt and pepper, put duck fat, and then put parsley and garlic if you like it, or wait until the end for the parsley. But I like to put garlic, and you could even put garlic whole cloves if you go in the oven, because it's going to take a little longer than sauteing in the pan like that. Mushrooms go very, very fast.
Okay.
You know, mushrooms are mostly water. 97% of the content of a mushroom is water. So you think you have 1 pound of mushrooms and all of a sudden, all right, so you see, when it smokes like that, that means, okay, it's high, but maybe it's a little too high. You don't want to burn the meat, you just want to sear it like this, okay? So at that point, when you start to smoke like that, I'm going to go down. I'm going to go down, and then I'm going to wait. You might want to do this, which is just searing the sides also. I don't know if you hear. I'm at the office right now. We're in the warehouse and in the kitchen of D'Artagnan in New Jersey, and there are a lot of people preparing Christmas orders right now in the warehouse. So, okay, so now searing the bread, it's still very, very rare inside, okay? Cooking the mushrooms and make sure they are not crowded in the pan so that their natural water evaporates and doesn't boil. You know, so the mushroom doesn't boil in the water, so the water goes out.
So to cook potatoes in duck fat, do you slice them or do you use raw potatoes or do you boil them?
Yeah, take raw potatoes, peel them, slice them thin if you like when they are very crusty and a little brown, and simply put them in the fat that is already hot. Preheat the fat in the pan. Add a little bit of truffle butter if you want, and salt and pepper on the potatoes, and that's it. It's difficult to tell you how long it's going to take. It depends how thick or thin you're going to slice the potatoes. But my way of doing it is to cut them pretty thin because I love when they are crunchy. And in order to have them crunchy, you have to start at a pretty high temperature, which is very fitting for the duck fat. Duck fat frying point is very high, so there is no problem with that. So at that point,
So are we still skin down on the duck and still low heat?
I will still
Put the skin down on the duck and then low heat?
No, we flipped it only once, eh?
Oh, we flipped
it
Nanette.
And when I said flip, we flip. That's it. Now it's the flesh is down and the skin is up.
Okay.
We have to cook the skin. See, the skin is nice and colored. That's it. So this particular duck is called the moulard duck. Moulard duck is basically moulard. The word is comes from mule. It's a crossbreed, like a mule. It's a crossbreed. A mule is a crossbreed between a donkey and a mare. Moulard is a crossbreed between a Peking hen and a Muscovy drake. That's how we call the male duck. And so, because those two breeds they are both ducks, but they are distant cousins, they don't breed together very well. So we have to use artificial insemination to get the moulard. But it's the best tasting for the breast, and more importantly, this is the breed that we need to make foie gras. Not the big liver of the duck. All right, so personally, I am done with my vegetables. Is there anybody else who's doing vegetables right now? Mushrooms or potatoes or other things? Green beans, carrots, what? Anything that is going to stop? Okay. All right, so we should be all at the same point right now, which is that our vegetables are almost done, or our mushrooms are almost done, and our duck is nicely cooking, skin side down in the pan, and whatever extra fat is still in there. Oh, I added two mushrooms. The key to this is to keep the breast medium rare because it's red meat really, and to let it rest once it has to. That's very important because it doesn't have more properties of red meat than of poultry. And so because of that, it's super important to let it rest, but even poultry, it's important to let it rest. That way all the juices come back inside, and that way also you have continuous cooking inside the bread. So here, I'm pretty sure that we're done. And one way to test it is to see how on the side under the skin, you put your finger, if it's hot, it's done. You wait 2 more minutes and then we're done here. On the mushroom, we are done with the mushroom. This is how I like it, you know, when there is this crisp, little bit of that crisp coloring in there, that's what gives all the flavor. So if one thing is cooked before the other, don't panic, just switch it off And you always can reheat it, you always can put it back on a little bit just before serving. But also, especially on the, as far as the meat is concerned, when you have a piece of meat and that you let it rest the way we are going to let it rest, of course, the heat is going to dissipate a little bit. So try to do that in a warm place next to the stove. And also make sure that when you make the sauce is really, really warm when you're going to coat the meat with it. Okay? Another trick is to preheat your plate. And if they can stand it, you need to put your plates in the oven. That way your plates are really hot and are going to keep the heat for the meat. That's the trick of every restaurant. All right, this is done. So now we're taking the extra fat in the mushroom, taking the demi-glace, and here we'll put around half of it. The demi-glace is going to deglaze the pan. This is called deglazing the pan, which means it's going to take all the very little bits of meat and juices that were in the pan. It reduces nicely. If you have a little bit of wine, put the wine. Measure very carefully. All right, and then the last touch is going to be to put the truffle butter, so that it's going to coat nicely the meat. The idea of butter in general in the sauce, and also the fact that there is this very concentrated broth in there, is to be able to coat the meat, because the sauce that cannot coat it is not perfect. You don't have that effect on the meat. So for now, I'm going to switch this off because we are at the level where it's reduced enough. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. Just a little bit here. It's reduced enough that all I need now, and I did add a little bit of wine that it did reduce. All we need now is to put the butter and to whip it in there. When you do that, whether it's regular butter or truffle butter, don't do that in a boiling liquid, ever. Okay, it has to be very hot, but not boiling, otherwise it's going to separate the butter. Okay, I think we're ready to go.
So Ariane, Nanette wants to know how much of the demi-glaze does she have to put in the duck fat, and how high should the heat be?
So not in the duck fat. There was no duck fat anymore in the pan. There was only little residue of juices. The extra duck fat I put in the mushrooms. If you're not doing your vegetables, just reserve it somewhere else. Okay, but don't keep any duck fat in there when you put the broth. You can, if you want, you can put a shallot that you mince and you put it in there, and then you put the demi-glace. What we did, I put approximately half of the container. Okay, that's being very generous. You don't have to go that high. People will do just a couple of spoonfuls, and that will be enough. On the wine, you can put the same amount or less. And the more wine you put, the more you have to wait for the wine to evaporate its alcohol, because the last thing you want is a raw wine taste in your sauce. You do want that effect of the reduction that is actually cooked. Cooked wine is very pleasant in the sauce. Raw wine that hasn't reduced enough is not very pleasant in the sauce. Okay, we ready to assemble? Are we ready? Are you ready? Can I see people with duck breast right now? I want to see your duck breast. Show me.
I'm not gonna see the duck breast.
Sunny, can I see your duck breast? Nanette, oh yeah, nice.
Well,
All right. Jack,
Here.
cool. Sunny, very nice, very nice.
very nice.
Oh, look at that. I like this. Jack, very nicely done.
That's very nice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the squirrel is really nice. The mushrooms are very nice. Cool. Very cool. Very cool.
How is ours, Wenrikai?
Very nice.
She said very nice.
Okay,
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, so you have your plate, if possible, coming out of the oven. You have a cutting board. That is nice. Any of the juices from the rested breast put in there, you know, that's very good right there. The juices that the breast will have taken out, and then we're going to start slicing on like that. You see, like that on an angle, and this is how it should look like. It should be medium rare. If you like your meat very cooked, very well done, duck is not for you because it's going to be dry. But if you like it medium rare like this, it's perfect. All right, so we're going to keep the skin because I love the skin. And also it's good looking. Keep cutting on a bias. At home in Gascony, this would feed one person. Here it could feed maybe 2 people. Because it's, I mean, it's a lot, eh? It's a lot. Look, it's a very generous portion right there. Ooh, the cooking is perfect. I'm so proud. All right.
So Ariane, Sunny is asking, how long should I cook the other side on medium high? She thinks hers has been on for about 7 minutes now.
Yeah, 7 minutes. That should be enough. Yeah. 7-8 minutes for the, basically it's 17 minutes total. 10 minutes on the skin, very low, and 5 to 7 minutes on the flesh side, very high. Okay. Don't let those juices go to waste.
Yeah.
This is the best part. Okay. All right. So for the sauce, we're here. We have a very hot, reduced sauce. We're going to take some butter, and we are not going to hesitate. That's the amount. Okay, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Yes, it's rich, but I promise you it's worth it.
Okay. Ariane, Andy wants to know, can you review what to do with the demi-glaze, please?
Yeah, we're gonna do that. Meanwhile, I'm gonna plate my mushrooms. Voila.
Sounds delicious, doesn't it?
Okay, so remember, no boiling. No boiling, hot but no boiling. And so the demi-glace, you basically, when it was time and that the breast was done, you took the breast out to let it rest. Whatever extra fat was in there, you put it on the side or on your vegetables. But in the same pan, you then took 2 spoonfuls of the demi-glace, put it in there and let it reduce. Add a little bit of red wine if you want, but it's not mandatory. And now we're simply going to add the butter, whip it in there, and basically, literally, your sauce is ready. It goes very, very fast. And you see that it's smoking hot, but you don't want it to boil. Otherwise, the butter is going to separate. Do not let it boil. Okay? And you want to get that consistency, that coating consistency right there. Okay? At that point, just to check the taste. You find out that the salt is fine, but you want a little pepper. And that's it. We are done. Look at that. And this, my friends, is duck breast with a truffle sauce and mushrooms.
Mm. Oh.
Any
But-
questions? Any
Well,
questions?
Fatima wants to know what are the ingredients that's been added to the duck so far?
All right. So again, at the beginning, nothing in the pan, just the duck breast, skin side down, a very low temperature.
Very hard. Can
After and salt and pepper on the duck breast.
you read it?
After 10 minutes, you turn the heat to very high and you turn your breast on the flesh side. Okay? And that's going to be for another 5 to 7 minutes. And you check it in between the skin and the flesh to see that it's ready. Meanwhile, all the fat that has been rendering in the pan from the skin, you put in another pan where you cook your vegetables. And your vegetables in that case was mushroom with salt and pepper. Okay? Those mushrooms, I also added a little bit of the truffle butter simply because truffle is an underground mushroom. It will impart a lot of flavor to the mushrooms as well. Okay. Then when we're done with the breast, we put it on the side and we let it rest. While we let it rest, in the pan, we make sure that we don't have any more fat. We take the fat out. We put the heat to high. We put 2 spoonfuls of demi-glace, a little bit of red wine if you want. Then you let this reduce a couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes while your meat is resting. And then you lower the temperature so that it doesn't boil. And at that point, when it's not boiling, you take half of the container, which means an ounce and a half of truffle butter, you put it in there and you mix it really well in there until it forms a sauce that has a coating consistency. You taste it, you make sure you are happy with the salt and pepper, and you throw it on top of your meat, and it's ready. We are done. I'm going to taste because, yeah. Any question? Any question?
Vocal is asking, how do you garnish with parsley?
It's very easy. You just chop some parsley very fine, and you just put it on top like you would put salt on top.
And do you do the same with garlic?
So if you want to do something that is called in French a persillade, persillade is half garlic, half parsley. What you do is you take your cloves of garlic, you really mash them, and you cut them fine. You mix them with your minced parsley, and you add that mixture to your vegetable or your mushrooms or your potatoes at the last minute. Because you minced it really, really fine, is going to instantly cook in there. So you don't want to put it too early in the pan, because if you put it too early in the pan, it's going to overcook. And the idea of the garlic and the parsley, the persillade, is to give that added taste. At D'Artagnan, we have those duck breasts. We also have those Rohan duck breasts, which are coming from the hens, the female ducks, that are another crossbreed that is proprietary to D'Artagnan. And those breasts are much smaller. The cooking is exactly the same, but faster. And what's nice about the Rohan is that it's exactly a portion size. Whereas this one, you can see, I'm not going to be able to eat this on my own. It's really for two people. But the Rohan duck breast can be 5-7 ounce raw, so it's the perfect size, portion size for one person, one scoop.
Wonderful. So Sunny said, I think I still have blood coming out of the meat once it's sat there for a while. Is that a correct rareness?
There will be juices coming out while it rests. The surest way to know the cooking temperature is experience. So what I did while it was in the pan, I put my finger in between the skin and the flesh, and I knew by touching it there and by the consistency, I knew that it was medium rare.
I lost it.
At home, and when you never did that before, you're not going to get it the first time. So what I suggest is that if you really like your meat at a particular level of medium rare, and medium rare in general is 125 to 135, you buy a meat thermometer and you put that meat thermometer in your meat at least the first 2-3 times, so that when you touch and when you put the thermometer, you understand what it's supposed to touch and to feel like when you touch it at the right temperature. When you do that with a meat thermometer, keep in mind that while it rests, it's going to continue to cook. So it is important to keep it under the temperature you need. So in that case, 125 is plenty, because it's going to take at least another 5 degrees while it rests.
So can we cook all duck breast the same way and it'll come out medium rare, or is it just this particular duck?
Yeah, but the Rohan one, or if you have a Long Island one, be mindful that as they are smaller, they're going to cook faster. So be careful, that's all. When I say 10 minutes on one side and 7 on the other, for a Rohan breast, it's half that. It's like 6 minutes and 4 minutes. A Peking duck breast, same thing. It's like 10 minutes altogether, total.
Jack is wondering, can we put white wine in the sauce instead?
White wine instead of red wine in the pot? Yeah, why not? You can even put, if you want, a little bit of Banyuls vinegar or balsamic vinegar instead of the wine, because that will add a little bit of an acidity in there. And if you like acidity and sweetness in the same time, then the trick is to start with shallots. Take a shallot, mince your shallots, and once you took out your breast, just before you put your demi-glace in there, put your shallots in a little bit of the fat that is left. Wait until the shallots are becoming translucent, and then put the 2 spoonfuls of demi-glace in it. Now in a restaurant, what they would do that, and then they would strain so that you wouldn't see the shallots in the sauce. But at home, you can keep the shallots in there because they are good tasting and they are not disturbing. You know, they do little pieces of just little pieces of shallots, but it's not disturbing. It's very good.
Perfect. Parole is asking, what green vegetables would you serve with this meal, and can it be cooked in jet fat as well?
Of course. anything cooked in that fat is better. I promise you. I promise you. Just try. I promise you.
Well, there's no answer here.
I would, it would depend on the season. I would do string beans simply because it goes fast. Could do asparagus in the season. You could do Brussels sprouts. If you want to cook everything at the same time so that everything is ready, be mindful that, for example, Brussels sprouts are going to take a little longer. So instead of keeping them whole in the pan, cut them in four so that they're going to cook at the same speed than the duck. Because the duck, you saw, I mean, in literally 15 minutes we were done. Counting the sauce and the preparation, in half an hour you have a dinner.
I actually have a question for you, Ariane.
Yeah.
So in terms of living at International House in the late 70s, we were told that you actually started your business while you were there. Is that true?
No. No. I was there. I was at Barnard at the time, trying to graduate to go to journalism school at Columbia University. Turns out that I never graduated. I ran out of money. But while I ran out of money, I found a part-time job in a little charcuterie in Greenwich Village, a salumeria, French salumeria. And at the end of the summer, they wanted to keep me. And so they offered me a contract and they offered me to pay for a lawyer to get a green card. And so it fitted me very well because I didn't have enough money to go back to school. And I rediscovered food, which, this is where I come from. I come from Gascony, where my family has been 7 generations in the food business, in the restaurant business, or as a farmer, or as a winemakers. I mean, everybody in Gascony is in the food business one way or another. And I escaped. I went to see what else was in the world. And then I discovered that there was nothing else but food. And so I went right back into it. So when I worked at that little charcuterie, the shop on 13th Street, then they kept me for 5 years. I stayed there for 5 years until one day, 2 farmers arrived with a foie gras in their hands. And they said that they were starting the first foie gras farm in America. And to me, it was historical. It was, wow, there is no foie gras in America. Those guys are going to make the first ones. I come from the country of foie gras, the region of foie gras. My father was specialized of foie gras in the restaurants. He had a 2 Michelin-starred restaurant, the Hôtel de France in Auch, the capital of Gascony. He was very well known for foie gras. I couldn't let that pass. And I tried to get it for my bosses, the 2 partners of the little charcuterie. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. And that's how I started my company.
That's exciting. While folks are enjoying their meal, I just wrote in the chat that if they, we have a couple of minutes if they have any general questions for you.
I have a question, but I'm not sure how to. I've written it down, but how do I send it to you?
No, you're here. You can ask it.
Oh, great. Okay. I understand that once you finish cooking the meat, you want to let it rest for 10 minutes. And if you have a warm plate, that's great. But did I hear you say that you want to warm it up a little bit to keep it warm after you've let it rest for 10 minutes?
No. No. It's too long. It's going to get cold. We let it rest for 5 minutes, just the time to do the sauce, okay? And 5 minutes is plenty. It's fine. So 5 minutes, you still have meat that is warm enough. And as long as your sauce, when you cut it on top, is hot, it's going to be fine, okay? What I said, you could stop and reheat is the garnish, the vegetables.
Oh.
If your vegetables are done before your meat or before you're all together ready to assemble, then don't hesitate to switch off the vegetables because they are done. You don't want to overcook them. And then you can very well, for 1 minute or 2 minutes maximum, reheat them before you plate them. That's all.
Ah, thank you. Thank you.
So Anita said, I'd really like to hear Ariane's memories of iHouse in the late 1970s.
Um, I have a couple of really fun souvenirs. One is the La Fête des Nations, the Nations Feast.
Ah.
Do you still do that once a year?
Yes. Well, unfortunately, pre-COVID, yes, we're still doing it. We were still doing it.
So the French community at iHouse decided that I would be in charge of it. And so I went around in the French community of food in New York. I got some free food, free wine, free Armagnac brandy, and some money to get and a free hotel room and free plane tickets for two chefs to come to help us organize the French section of the Feast of Nations. So the two chefs happened to be my boyfriend at the time and my brother. What a coincidence. and we had a ball. And we had a ball, and we for 3 days we really we made crepe, and we really outsold everybody else, and we had a ball. That's one thing that will stay in my memory forever. And the second one was that I wanted to, again with some friends at iHouse who happened to be interested in gastronomy, in good cooking. There were a couple of Italian guys and a German girl, and I mean, and a Lebanese woman who were like a group of 7 or 8. And we really love to go out and splurge once every 2-3 months in a good dinner and a good restaurant. But we didn't have the money, so I tried to use my father's name here and there so we could get free dessert by the chefs, and that's how I met all the chefs of New York, really, by doing those dinners. But then when we didn't have enough money, we would do the dinners at iHouse. And so we would take one of those small rooms that were in the main floor downstairs, that where the little kitchen was attached to that. And I remember the very first time they told me, we voted for what to eat, and they absolutely wanted lobster. Lobster is a luxury food in Europe, and here it's not that expensive in relation to Europe. So I went all the way down to Chinatown. I bought live lobsters, but that was that morning, and I wanted to keep them live, and I didn't know where to go with those lobsters. I had a very minuscule room on the floors. I had a room where basically you couldn't fall off the bed. I mean, it was that, I don't know how you are organized today, but at that time they were really, really small. But there was a French guy, Jean-Jacques Servan-Schreiber. He was from a famous family in France, and he was in a room that was more upgraded, and he actually had a bathroom, and he actually had a bathtub in the bathroom. And so I asked him to give me his key. He was busy. He just gave me the key. He didn't ask me why, and I went and put the lobsters in the bathtub.
In the bathtub.
And when it was closer to the dinner time, I had to go and find him, and he was all bent out of shape in his room because he had opened the door. He wanted to take a shower, and he saw live lobsters in his bathroom.
It's a great story. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I should come and visit. How are the rooms now on the?
Same. It's still iHouse South is the same rooms.
Yep.
Yeah.
The same.
Yeah. There's now iHouse North, but I don't know if that existed in your day. I'm not sure when that
No.
opened.
No, that building didn't exist. I met Henry Kissinger
Really?
at High House. Yeah.
Yeah, he was on the board of trustees, I believe.
Yeah, and he came on a pretty regular basis.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being so attentive and to have all the right questions. I really hope you enjoyed, and I really hope that you're eating right now before it's cold and that you're enjoying with a very nice glass of wine.
Thank you.
Before we take off, Ariane, someone actually wants a closer look at your food, if that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, now it's starting to be cold a little bit, but this is it right now. You see? All right.
Looks perfect.
Okay.
Thank you everyone so much for joining us. I hope you enjoy your meal and I hope you had a wonderful time. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Enjoy.